a couple called me, husband and wife, about their two children who are 9 and 11. They were 9 and 11 then, and oddly, they're 9 and 11 now, because this was recently. Julia and Jeremy. And they said that Julia, so she's the younger, tended toward being entitled and controlling, while Jeremy, the older, was much more of a people pleaser and would regularly give in to Julia bullying him. It's usually the older child that bullies, but certainly not universal. So I said, give me an example of something that Julia might do to Jeremy that would be unkind. And Dad said, well, she might want him to do something for her, like give her a toy or come play a game with me. And then if he refuses, she says mean things to him. Oh, well, you're mean. You're mean, with that tone of voice, which is to a child really just an assault. Or she would make him feel guilty. Oh, well, that hurts my feelings. You don't care about me. You won't come and play a game with me. I'll tell you, kids only say things like that if, A, they've almost certainly heard their parents say something like that, usually to each other, or they've just kind of randomly come across that phrase, heard it at school or whatever, tried it at home, and it worked. That's a really important part. This older child keeps being bullied by the younger child because the younger child discovered it works. So it's not about the younger child is mean, the older child is weak, although there's, some obvious evidence that the younger child uses power and the older child is a people pleaser. Yes, but people don't keep doing stuff that doesn't work. Mom added, she might make something up that didn't even happen. So like she might say, well, Jeremy made a mess in the kitchen. When she just walked by and saw there was a mess, didn't even care who made it, whether it was her or whoever, just to get him in trouble. Now, that is power seeking. Trying to get him to come play a game with her, just manipulation. She wants to play a game and she wants a partner. But making up something that didn't even happen to get him in trouble, that kind of really flirts with the mean line. She's getting a sense of power with this kid. Dad chimed in again, said she'll want some help with her homework, but he gets frustrated because she's pretty hard to teach. You could imagine why she would be, right? I mean, this is a child who gets everything that she wants. And so if she runs into a trouble, like say with math, that he's trying to help her with, well, then what would she do? Because she's used to manipulating people, she would just manipulate him into solving the problem for her, rather than listening to him and learning a principle. Now, is everybody paying attention to this? Because this isn't a story about a 9 and an 11-year-old. Really, this is a story about how adults interact, every day, like everywhere. We find some little handle on somebody that we know we can jerk on, and we reach out and we jerk on it because it works. Now, the handle comes from fear, the handle of the person who's being jerked around. Because they're afraid, in this case, Jeremy's a people pleaser, we reach out and grab the handle because we're empty and afraid. And we're off to the races. It's a disaster. We've got one person being jerked around, the other person jerking on the other one, and they think it's about the homework or the game or the whatever. No, it's about pain that was inflicted daily from the time we were little children. So continuing, that was a long parenthesis for which I apologize to the dad who was actually trying to tell us something here. So Dad says she'll want some help with the homework, but she's tough to help. And so he eventually just gets frustrated. Then she fusses and resists just for the reasons I talked about, because she wants him to solve the problem. And if he goes to walk away, she tells him that he's mean and he doesn't care about her. Then, of course, he comes back because he's a people pleaser, but he's hating it now. more and more. Now he's helping her, but he's just hating it. He feels it. He doesn't like it. She doesn't like it. He tries again. Clearly, he doesn't really want to help her. And Dad concludes his little contribution here by saying, we don't know how to stop this pattern. And I said, so what do you do about the pattern now? What do you presently do when she bullies him and he goes along with it? The parents said, well, we say to her, now, you need to leave Jeremy alone, or we tell them to stop fighting. This is hysterical. This would be like me counseling with people who've been married for 20 years. They've been jerking on the same handle or stabbing each other with the same blade in the same place for 20 years. And they walk in and I just say, oh, well, you need to stop that. Just beyond funny. So here are the parents who've taught the children how to do this, put them in a position where they're empty and afraid so that they need to do this because they don't see a loving option. And the parent's solution to this is to say, now, you need to stop that. So we're getting that we've actually crossed the line over into stand-up comedy here. So I said, that will never work. Ever. What you're doing now will not work, not just conceptually, but you've already proven, since these two have been doing this for as long as you can remember, like from the time that the younger one was 2 years old. So that's at least 7 years. It's never worked. To tell somebody to stop a thing is worthless because they don't know what else to do. Just like drug addicts, people who are addicted to smoking, every drug addict, every alcoholic, every smoker that I know of has, quote, tried to stop. All of them. Because they recognize it's not working. They recognize they're miserable. So they stop drinking. They stop smoking. And then they discover they're in outer space without a helmet. It's that big. For those of you who are not familiar with outer space, the oxygen supply is really low in outer space and it's kind of cold. And so when you take your helmet off, you can't breathe and then you freeze to death. And that all happens in a space of about, 5 seconds. The reason that we do these things, jerk on other people's handles, manipulate them, the reason that we are drug addicts is because we're in pain and we don't know something that would work better. And we have to understand that with these two little kids whose names I have to keep looking up to because I can't remember them, Julia and Jeremy. I may resort to calling them him and her in a minute. So I said to the parents, you could, notice, I'm just providing an option. I don't tell people what to do or what to say because it's not my life. And if they don't do what I say, I'm fine with that. But I do provide them an option because one of the feelings we hate most, as I've said 100 times, is feeling trapped. These two start arguing, these two kids, and the parents, oddly, feel trapped. They have no idea what to do. They recognize there's something wrong with this picture, but they don't know what to do. The kids don't know what to do. Everybody feels trapped. Everybody feels stupid. Nobody has another option. So sometimes I describe one. So they'll have one. That's all. I keep banging my head against the wall and somebody comes along and says, why do you keep banging your head against the wall? And I go, well, is there another way to live? Well, it would look pretty stupid, but that's how we live. I need somebody to come along and say, yeah, if you'll step 3 feet away from, the wall, you'll discover you don't actually have to bang your head against the wall. And maybe we could sit down and have lunch and talk. And I discover, wow, that's more fun than banging my head against the wall. But I didn't know that before. That sounds like an absolutely absurd example. No, it's not. It's how most of us live, banging our head against the wall. So I said, you could say to Julia, this is to the parents, you could say what she just did. You could say, Julia, here's what you just said to your brother. And you mimic it in her voice. You won't play Scrabble with me. Which, when you mimic the voice, they really hate. You know why they hate it? because they know that there's something wrong with it. They really do. If I walked into the room holding a piece of broccoli and said to you, you're just like this broccoli, you would be puzzled and think possibly that I was a little insane. May not be entirely off, but you wouldn't be irritated by it because it's absurd. There's no truth in it. But when you mimic the way somebody is talking and quote them exactly, and they know there's something selfish and demanding in it, that it's true, then it bothers them. And that's a clue to you. You mimic her whining voice, and then you translate what she said into English. Because see, this, you're just being mean to me. No, that's not English. The words you're being mean to me are, but all of the, then the contorted facial expressions, no, that's not English. It's been proven by multiple studies in how in the world they come up with these numbers, I don't know. But that communication is 93% nonverbal. Tone of voice, facial expression, body posture, lifting an eyebrow. We communicate in so many. Well, for example, some of the greatest actors ever have been mimes. They don't use any words. They communicate whole stories and eloquent attitudes and feelings without saying a word. There's your proof. And what we don't realize is we're miming all the time. And then we throw in words that don't match the mime. This is just crazy making. So you tell her, here's what you just said. Now, in English, here's what you're saying. This is really important stuff because this is the kind of thing you'd say to your child, and it's the kind of thing you need to say to yourself. Everybody who's listening. What you're really saying is this: I'm the most important person in the world. And you, my minion, my slave, my lapdog, you have to do what I say because I own you. That's what you tell her. That's what you're really saying. Now, she'll deny it, and she'll start now to whine at you. And then if you'd like, you can translate that into English, but let's stick with this subject. You continue to tell her, you're demanding that he do what you want. Would you like it if I duct taped you from head to toe? Because that's what you're doing to Jeremy. You're duct taping this kid to a chair, and you're just doing with him pretty much whatever you want. We were in the middle of a family meeting once, and we had a kid who was controlling another kid. And to illustrate how people don't really like being controlled, I put the rest of the kids in charge of duct taping that child to a chair. Other children are only too happy to duct tape one of their siblings to a chair. It only took one roll of duct tape and produced a lesson that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. And this kid couldn't even move. They had this kid duct taped so he couldn't turn his head. Turns out we don't like being controlled. And you need to illustrate to her, if necessary, with duct tape, long enough to be really uncomfortable. You're not going to leave her there overnight. We don't like it. And that you say to her, that's what you're doing to your brother. You're controlling him. And it's wrong. It's wrong. Always wrong. It's just like having a slave. And whatever it was, the 13th Amendment, pretty sure it was, of the United States Constitution outlawed slavery. I'll be darned. And you tell her, we're not going to do this anymore because it's wrong. And because it hurts him and because it hurts you. It makes you entitled. If you get what you want, if your brother gives you what you want, you're briefly satisfied, but then we've watched you. You come right back and you do it again. So if it in some way benefited you and was no big deal to your brother, then we'd go, whatever. But it turns out it doesn't benefit you. Doesn't really make you happier. Certainly doesn't make him happier. So this is the end of this game. We're not going to do it. I'll save you some trouble of wondering whether she's going to like this. She's really going to hate it that you're saying this. Dad even said, she'll tell us that we're hurting her feelings. Is everybody hearing this? So what's the real reason that Dad doesn't tell her what she needs to learn, because dad is just as captive as a people pleaser to his daughter as the brother is to his sister. The whole family plays this game. Oh, she'll tell us that we're hurting her feelings. Oh, well, we wouldn't want to hurt somebody's feelings. Let's let them do whatever they want. And then we'll discover what happens when they go to school or they go to get a job and they tell their boss that they're going to do whatever they want, which, by the way, as I talk to CEOs, is happening more and more. I talked to one CEO when he told an employee what to do, and the employee told him it was unfair. And the CEO said, "Too bad, I signed your paycheck." And the employee said, "I'm going to call my mother." You think I'm joking? This hasn't happened rarely. This happens all over the world. "I'm going to call my mother." And the CEO said, "I'll save you the trouble. You can call her on your way home because you won't have to deal with this situation here." We have to teach them these things because they work. Because loving works, because being responsible works. We have to teach them these things because if we don't teach them, the world will teach them, and the world will hit them in the head with a sledgehammer while they teach them. So we're doing them a kindness no matter how they resist. Dad continued. She'll tell us we're hurting her feelings, and then she'll stomp out of the room. No. I said, so she does this with you just like she does it with her brother Jeremy. She intimidates you with her guilt just like she does her brother. And her father, this is a mature, intellectual, bright owner of his own business, looked at me and went, "Well, I never saw that before." Yeah, no kidding. When it comes to making intellectual decisions, 2 + 2 is 4. How are we going to build this bridge? How are we going to negotiate this deal? Should we negotiate it so that we actually make money versus lose money? Turns out we use our brains pretty well. But when it comes, they've proven this, by the way, in learning theorists have, we make pretty good decisions if they're relatively simple and we can use our brains. Even building a skyscraper is a whole series of really single decisions, mathematical engineering, and we do that well. When it comes to making decisions with our feelings, when we've never been unconditionally loved, we suck at it. We're terrible. So here's Dad, owner of his own business, who'd never even seen the fact that he was intimidated by his 9-year-old. Those of you who are thinking, well, I don't have any 9-year-old children, so this doesn't apply to me. Yeah, I promise that 70% of the people that I'm talking to, I'm being too kind, 90% of the people that I'm talking to right now are intimidated by the disapproval of other people and play this game with them. Same game that the dad plays with the girl, same game that the girl plays with the dad and plays with the brother, and it's a mess. So I said, you could do this, because Dad had no clue. And that's the only reason I provided a solution. I said, you could say, as she is stomping out, "Julia, turn around and look at me. You have to stop her from going out of the room. She can't leave until you deliver this message. You are welcome to go to your room and cry. You can do that. You have a choice to do that. But then I will come with you and we will continue the conversation there. So you can stomp to your room, but we're still going to have the same conversation. You can cry if you want, and we're still going to have the same conversation. So we can have a conversation right here that is in this room where you don't have to move and you don't have to cry and you don't have to be all miserable and have snot running down your lip. Or you can go to your room and we can do it the hard way. And if I come to your room and you keep crying, then we'll start making it even more uncomfortable. Children all learn if you're consistent. If you're not, they don't learn this. That if they pitch a big enough fit, you'll quit. That's why they pitch a fit. I just dealt with a family this morning, and every single time the kids pitch a fit, the dad gives them whatever they want. Here's a child who wants $1,000 to finish her education to get a degree that is absolutely worthless. She can't get a job with this degree. You'd have to go on and become a PhD. And of course, then she would, milk him for that money too. And includes spending a semester abroad in Paris. And well, she's disrespectful. She's irresponsible. She's unkind to everybody in the family. And Mom suggested that maybe it wasn't the right thing to do to give her all this while she was behaving like a brat. And Dad just cried and said, oh, but she needs to feel loved. And so he just gave her all the money she wanted. That's how we teach them to have little fits. And I promise you, he's done this with her hundreds of times. And then she grows up to be like the people that I get to deal with, who are now 40 and 50 years old, and they have no employment skills at all, no career skills. They have nothing to put on a resume that an employer would be interested in. And it turns out that employers are actually looking for people who are a return on their investment. Amazing. So we keep increasing the consequences. I'm saying this to the dad until she listens. So, for example, I know the 17-year-old girl who absolutely refused to listen and used to slam her door and scream and fuss. And I told the father, do you have a tool chest? Yes. Go out and get a pair of pliers and a hammer and grab the top little part of the bolt that creates the hinge on her door, and grab it with the pliers and bang it upward with the hammer and remove the 3 pins and take the door and put it out in the garage. And now she has no door. Yeah, it turns out that 17-year-old girls really, really like having doors on their little private, entitled rooms. And she started listening. We're not doing this to punish children, ever. When I talk to adults, I have no interest in making their lives hard. Earlier today, a man was saying to me, you're being harsh. And I said, honey, this is my day off. You think I would take my day off, part of it, and first day off I've had in months, and use part of it to be mean to you? I said, just say these words to me. You're fired, go away. And see how long it takes me to hang up. No, we're not, I'm not here to be mean to him. And I said to the father, you're not there to be mean to her, but you have to pick something, talking to the dad, that she'll really hate losing. Phone, a door, there's always something. One mother actually had I don't know the right word to use for it, the ridiculousness, we'll call it, to look me in the eye and say, oh, I can't think of anything that they would hate losing. So you haven't lived with your children then up to this point. How do you know what a child values most? Watch what they do. I said, what are they doing right now? This was 11 o'clock in the morning. She said, they're in bed. I said, no kidding. It's 11 o'clock in the morning and I'm not in bed. Well, she said, well, it's summer. I said, so if you told them that one of the consequences for not having whatever done that they're supposed to be done is to get up at 6:30 in the morning during the summer, how long do you think it would take for them to learn the lesson? She said, well, they'll really hate that. No kidding. Which is exactly why you do that. So she's going to go and have them get up at 6:30 in the morning. And if she does it consistently, meaning even twice, and she means it, and she's not afraid, and she's not crying, and she's not angry, they'll catch on and they'll do whatever it takes to avoid getting up at 6:30 in the morning. And back to the father. Pick something she would hate losing, remove that, and keep going. Keep removing things until she deals with her entitlement, which will kill her. Maybe she needs to hear some of the stories that I could tell you all day long about 40 and 50-year-old people who grew up entitled, and now they don't know how to do anything. Nothing. They have no relationships. They have no job. They have no place to live. They have no purpose in life. They are like nothing. It's pretty miserable. It's really fun being entitled when everybody else is paying your way. Turns out when all those people disappear, being entitled isn't all that fulfilling. So Now let's go back to, so we've talked about Julia and her being entitled and being a brat, and we're going to talk about Jeremy. This is me talking to the parents. You have allowed yourself to be treated like this. This is what the parents are going to say to Jeremy. You let her do this to you. It turns out you have a choice. You didn't think you did. You thought that in order to not be a mean person, you had to do what she wants. No, you get to decide whether you want to help Julia with her homework. It does not make you a bad person. In fact, I very often say to people pleasers in the beginning, for a month, you're going to say no to every request made of you. And people are going to make a lot of them. People pleasers will actually break into tears. Well, I can't imagine doing that. Exactly why you need to do it. It's an addiction. People pleasing is a deadly addiction. You don't say to somebody who's a cocaine addict, I think we should experiment with using cocaine a little less. What do you think? I've never personally seen a cocaine addict use cocaine less. Not and have it turn into anything good. No, they have to stop it. They have to go from whatever it is to none. Same with people pleasing. And they'll say, well, but my mother really needs me to. No. No. You do have to sort of go to work, so that you can feed yourself and your whoever else is related to you. But on the whole, no, pretty much no. And that's what I would tell Jeremy. No matter what Julia asks you to do, your answer is going to be no. Until you can learn, and I'll be the one who will determine that. We're going to start off with a month. Until you can learn to make a choice whether what you're giving her is freely given. If I see your face furrow, even your brow wrinkle, if I see any hesitation on your part after the 30 days is going to happen all no matter what. But after 30 days, if I see you do it again, I'm going to go, well, we need to do it for another 30 days. Addictions have to be dealt with. Why? Somebody in the audience, raise your hand and give me the answer. Why do you have to deal with addictions? Because, well, the manual says it's a bad thing to do. Because the most important thing in life is choice. If you can't make choices, you can't be happy. People fight civil wars. People fight revolutionary wars. People fight to the death. People will do anything to not go to prison or shackled to people will do anything to retain choice. Because once we lose our choice, we kind of lose our humanity. No kidding. And that's what you're going to say to Jeremy. It makes every single time you give in to your sister, you become less a person. You obviously become less happy, but you become less a person. And then eventually the day will come when you realize you're so shackled by pleasing people that you don't exist. I just talked yesterday to a lady who's just like that. She doesn't exist as a person. She exists to serve other people and be a slave to whoever asks her to do whatever. It wasn't long ago, I remember talking to a woman who came to me and she said, I'd really like to stay for the rest of we were at a seminar somewhere. And she said, but a friend of mine is coming from whatever town an hour away. And when he comes, he's going to want to have dinner and then go upstairs and have sex. And I said, well, do you want to have sex with him? She said, well, not really. I said, then why would you? She said, well, he'll be mad at me if I don't. And then I thought, I've got to ask this question. Have you ever said no to somebody who wants sex from you? She said, well, no. No kidding. No, ever. In her life, has she ever said no? So I said, you do whatever you want to, really. Don't become my slave. Don't quit being his slave and become mine. No. But I'm going to suggest to you as an experiment that you call him up and say, don't come. Something else has come up. I'm going to be busy. We won't be having dinner and we won't be having sex. And I saw her a couple hours later. She was beaming because she'd made her own choice. very likely made her first real choice in decades. We get that imprisoned by these addictions. That's why they have to stop. Not because alcohol will hurt our liver, but because we lose our choices. So you don't ever again have to do, this is me talking to the father and coaching him about words to say to his son. You don't ever again have to do what another person tells you to do, with the exception, it sounds complicated, but it's not, of us, your parents, because that's our job, is to love and teach you. And sometimes we do have to tell you what to do because we're supposed to, and we're supposed to be teaching you how to do stuff. And if you want to become a bodybuilder, then we're going to have to run your training program and tell you to lift weights. It's like that. You're in a life class with us. And sometimes you actually have to attend class, and you may not like it always, but that's our job. But with other people, you really don't, because it's hurting you. And we don't do hurting in our family anymore. One of my kids, our kids, brought a friend to Christmas once here, and there were 20-something people in the house for 2 weeks. And the friend came up to me after a week and said, "When do you stop pretending?" I said, "About what?" She said, "I've never seen anybody in the family, nobody, in a whole week, 20-something people in the house. I've never seen anybody fight with somebody else or push them or make them feel guilty or intimidate them or criticize them or use them or anything." And she said, "I'm wondering when you quit pretending." I said, "We're not pretending." She said, "Well, how is this possible?" I said, "We've learned that we don't like hurting other people. That's how difficult it is. I don't enforce the rules. We've learned that we don't like being hurt. We've learned that love is better than pain." Imagine that. Wow, what a tough choice. But see, most of us have never seen that choice. Now, back to the father of Jeremy, who's being intimidated by his sister. We don't do hurting in our family anymore, and he'll see you two, you and your wife, be affectionate and kind and loving to each other, and he'll begin to see love as a choice, not a demand. And you will help him say no. He'll learn that it's a choice, because this stuff going on between your 9 and your 11-year-old can't continue. It will bury them both. It will bury him in people-pleasing, in the chains of people-pleasing, and it will bury her in the chains of entitlement, which is worse. Entitlement and controlling, or people-pleasing. That's really tough. Which is worse, being stabbed to death with a large knife or a little knife? You're actually considering this choice? When one of the choices is we'll just sit and have a pleasant conversation, and yet that is the choice most people are faced with, and they choose the knives. New subject. I know a man who's been in real love for a while, and he said, "My wife wants to join a church. She's been increasing her spiritual searching for several years now, and she wants to join a church. I'm happy for her. I don't have any objections if that's what she wants." Well, that's pretty brilliant on your part, because if she's making a choice, we just got through talking about the importance of choice, then staying out of it would be a really good idea. If she's going to join a church where, every 6 months you have to sacrifice one of your children and play with poisonous snakes, then you might want to talk to her about it. But otherwise, good choice on your part. You continue. We had a short discussion, and essentially she said that her new religion is true, while other religions are not. Yeah, well, that attitude is not going to win her a whole lot of friends. Certainly not with you, as I can tell already, since she knows that you don't like being told that you're wrong. And especially when there's no need to tell other people that they're wrong. So let's say that you believe that your opinion on anything, politics, religion, pick a thing, you believe that your choice is the only true choice. Well, okay. I don't care. I don't care if you think I'm just absolutely stupid because I voted for whoever. I don't care. But once you start telling me that I'm wrong and that dominates our conversations, then I'm probably going to get not irritated. Most people will pretty quickly. I'll get kind of bored. It's just not going to interest me to hear this anymore. You continue. When she puts forward her point of view on this, she doesn't qualify it with I believe or in my view or this is my particular take on things. She just says it's true. Yeah, I know a lot of people like that. And although it's pretty dogmatic of her to say that, it is still her choice to have an opinion, even a strong, exclusive opinion, as most people do about many things. You watch, the people who just quit smoking are zealots, I call them, converts. They go and preach the gospel of not smoking. No kidding. People who've discovered the latest new diet that I'm not making these up because I've heard a diet about everything. Eating blueberry skins is the only way to be healthy. Fine, have that opinion. But when we go around stating that our opinion is the only way, yeah, it tends to annoy people. And I know that you often state your opinion without saying, I believe too. And in both cases, hers and yours, I just don't care. So what? All right, so you have an opinion you think is the only true opinion on earth. Yeah, that's okay. But if you keep saying it to people, they're not going to like it. People are going to start avoiding you or fighting you or hating you. You continue. Again, without going into the ins and outs of it, I responded as I typically do when she does this. I pointed out that this is her opinion and that's fine. And she may well be correct. Oh, this is very good on your part. But it is only one perspective. It is not fact. Your response is actually really quite reasonable. But why argue about it? Because you're going to say that. You're going to say it's just your opinion. It's not fact. She's just told you that it is fact. Do you get it? So this is like two children in a sandbox fighting over the Tonka truck. It's mine. No, it's mine. It's mine. It's mine. It's mine. It's mine. I've watched kids go back and forth. It's mine. It's mine. Till after a while, you want to just break into laughter, film it, and show it to them. Why argue about it? Some people want to be right. And unless that limits you in some way, why try to control her being right? She's trying to control you with her opinion. And although you don't mean to, you're trying to control whether she states that she's right. You're correcting her when she says it's the truth, not just her opinion, is kind of like her telling you that her way is the only way. You're both controlling each other. It looks different, but not very much. So she says it's true. You say, no, it's not. And it degenerates into yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And then eventually we reach, well, your mama is fatter than mine. It just gets kind of silly. You continue. This generates friction, and she often refuses to accept this by saying that she now knows that it's the truth. And then I say, no, you mean you believe it's the truth. Do you get it? Yes, no, and yo mama. Why argue about it? If she believes it's fact, okay. She says the earth is flat. You go, okay. Who are you or anybody else to tell her that it's not fact? In fact, if I insist on pointing out to somebody that it is not fact, is that not just as dogmatic as her saying that it is? Yes, it is. It's just like the people who pick a cultural group, pick a socioeconomic class, pick a race, pick a whatever. And there are people who say, we demand that you be more tolerant and understanding of us. And I'm going, you get the joke in that, right? You're being intolerant as you talk to somebody else about their intolerance. The hypocrisy is kind of like mind-boggling, and all you have to do is look at politics, or actually, come to think of it, anything, and you see people's hypocrisy. They're doing exactly what they're condemning other people for doing. So she's not demanding that you believe like she does. She's only stating what she believes to be an absolute fact. Well, leave it alone. You conclude by saying, I feel disrespected because I may have another perspective on the subject. Therefore, she is not respecting that I may also hold a valid view. But see, she's not. She's not telling you that you have to believe as she believes. She's just saying it's an absolute fact. And then you decided to take it personally, to take it as she's telling you that you're wrong. And secondarily, she kind of is, but who cares? I have a number of friends of pretty much every religion on earth. And many of those religions say, you're really kind of not okay, with God unless you believe like I believe. And I know they believe that. And none of us care. So you're demanding that she respect you, hang on, is also disrespectful. I have a friend who's a racist, and he makes no apology about it. He'll just go on and on with racial epithets and they're inferior and blah, 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 blah. It looks a little ridiculous, but I have no right to tell him that he's wrong. You think he hasn't already heard that? You think I would be the first person to say, you realize that you're a racist pig, right? No, he's been told that by hundreds of people, and I kind of think he actually enjoys it. So I have no right to tell him that he's wrong, even though he's making me wrong, kind of implied by saying that, I should believe as he believes, for not joining him in his rants. Yeah, why don't we just leave each other alone as far as our opinions and do what we know always does work, which is to love people, whatever their particular opinion is. I've seen that become pretty effective. New subject. For a couple of years, I've been talking to a man who once had been just mired, like as in right up to his nostrils, in despair and in the rush and bustle of the world, kind of like the usual stuff. And he began to study and to learn and to feel, and his peacefulness reached a kind of ceiling. And I asked him to talk about how he spends his days. And we identified some activities that were less than productive, possibly even harmful, like drinking, porn, which is well established by even science to just adversely affect the brain. Stuff that is pretty much considered normal in the world. Porn is so widespread, for example, and I'm not giving a rant on porn, that, people just joke about it and, oh yeah, wow, I got nothing to do tonight, so I'll just use porn. And nobody even thinks anything about it, especially guys. It's even promoted as a healthy release. Many of these things, drinking, porn, whatever. People who avoid such things, people, for example, who say, I don't drink. I've been at numerous social gatherings where somebody says, I don't drink, or I never use porn, or I whatever. And other people will label them as extremists. We had old terms for it, teetotalers, a term that kids now wouldn't even know what that meant. But as really kind of right-wing crazy people if they don't dabble in what everybody else does. And so here's this man who had reached this kind of ceiling in his growth. This was all a prelude. And he writes to me and he says, one thing I'm learning is that when I don't numb out with all the things that we talked about, which I just named, and instead decide to just sit in my feelings and feel them, then I get to see how much of my life is empty of meaningful experiences. My goodness, I wanted to stop and sing the Hallelujah chorus. That's brilliantly insightful. I mean, until you abandon the things that are distractions, how could you possibly know how distracted you are? Really? watch a teenager who's got headphones on and the noise is just incredibly loud. And you try to speak to them. You can't speak to them because they can't hear you. And you finally tap them on their shoulder and they take it off and they go, you can almost see them not almost. You can see them visibly shake their head like, wow, silence is really something compared to the noise that was just in my head. So back to the guy who'd been using and quit using and went, wow, I realized how empty my life is. Yeah. And you are also sensitive now, without the noise, of meaningful experiences that otherwise might have passed you by. So while grenades are going off, nobody ever hears the song of a yellow-throated whatever bird there is. Since I'm obviously not a bird person, I can't even think. A swallow. Somebody's going to write me now and say swallows don't sing, and then I'm going to go, well, I don't care. It's a metaphor. While your head is filled with noise, you can't hear the sweet things. That's just a fact. Somebody came into the house one day and they said, I just sat out on your dock and I listened to the frogs and the birds and the insects, and it was like a symphony. And I got to admit to you, when I go outside, I've heard it so much that I just tune it out. If our head is distracted by enough loud things, we tune out the things that are really meaningful. He continues, like a glass of wine, like some work that would temporarily have made me feel less anxious or more worthwhile, like some just phony, I don't really care about it, Facebook browsing. So I'm saying I don't really care about it, but here I am doing it for hours, or a diverting film, or a YouTube video, or newspapers, or the next soundbite, or whatever. Yeah, stuff just like that. The noise of the world. You continue. I could easily fill that time with important unfinished tasks from work, stuff that, I've been avoiding. Or I could use it to do something meaningful that might enrich and deepen my life. Ooh, see, now we're getting into the choice between good and better, not just good and bad. Either choice would be productive. When you leave out the meaningless stuff, the having a drink, which then numbs any feelings that you have, when you leave out the porn, when you leave out the stuff that's just genuinely distracting, it has no positive use, when you leave that off, you simply have more meaningful choices to make. Both in number, you see more choices, and degree, you make increasingly meaningful choices. You continue. I could make an effort to ring somebody, obviously somebody from England, because we don't say ring somebody over here in the U.S. That would mean to take a metal object that was round and put it around them in some way. I could make an effort to call somebody and feel love, or to give love. I could read and remind myself of principles of how to live more lovingly, and then work out how to weave those into my life. Oh, a poet. I just love that. How I could read how to live more lovingly and weave that into my life. Ooh, just makes my skin tingle. I could spend a few minutes doing something more important. I could think up something that I could do to help somebody or bring joy into their life and therefore mine. I wonder how I missed this before. That's just beautiful. You are simply distracted by the world and the noise of it. The world is a very noisy place. The world screams at you on the internet, everywhere you go, on billboards, come here, come there, do this, do that, spend your money here. If you buy one of these, you'll be happier. The world screams at you. And if you want to hear the things that are really meaningful, you kind of have to tune those things out, or just simply get away from them physically, like as in shut your computer top. There's a hinge on your laptop, and if you take the top and you pull it towards you, it shuts and it turns off. I know some of us have never discovered this. He continues, thank you for your email yesterday that helped me figure all this out. I'm going to read it again. And see, I don't even remember what I said. But this is why we need each other. Other people can see things we're doing that hurt us when we can't see them. The noise is so loud that when somebody drops, say a pin, say something important, like as in strikes a tuning fork that produces a sound that just fills the soul. We can't hear that stuff when the noise of the world is loud. So way to go. You're on an interesting experiment and path. New subject. Here's somebody who writes, my ex-partner, ex-spouse, had my son over at his house yesterday. The ex found Jonathan, my son, going home with a pair of sunglasses that he hadn't brought with him. So they'd gone to a store. They were on their way home, and my ex noticed that he has a pair of sunglasses that he hadn't brought to the store. And so he asked about it. And it turns out that Jonathan, my son, admitted to shoplifting them. So the ex told Jonathan that he was wrong to have stolen them, and the boy promised never to do it again. That's going to work. You mean like, that's it? It turns out, and I really asked her that question. You mean, that's all he said? And she wrote back and said, well, yeah. And apparently she was relatively okay with that too, but she was kind of wondering if there should be more done about it. That's a joke to say to a child. Do you realize that that's wrong? And yeah, I promise not to do it again. Imagine the conversation going like this. Imagine a conversation between a father and a son, just like your ex and Jonathan, who's 12. Well, let's say he'd be older. Dad, I was driving drunk and I killed a couple of people who were, out for a walk. And then Dad responds with, well, son, do you promise not to do that again? The two people dying isn't funny. The dad's response is, no, don't do it again isn't enough. Where possible, we have to pay some price for doing wrong things, especially if we tend to do them repeatedly. And I happen to know that your son does do this kind of thing repeatedly, perhaps not shoplifting, but doesn't experience consequences for the choices that he makes. We have to pay a price. Jonathan has to go back to the store and with the ex, or you, if the ex won't, which is likely from his response, find the manager and return the glasses along with an admission that he stole them. So mom writes back, I'm a little worried about the consequences from there, that they could escalate if the shop decides to involve the police. Yeah, they might. I used to be a scout leader, and we just had no discipline problems with this group ever. And we went into a store. We were out in the middle of nowhere on our way to some canyon river run. And we get back into the bus, and I could smell that something was wrong, and went, hey, all right, what is it? And everybody looked at me like, that look of nothing. I said, who did what in the store? And some kid comes up holding like the kiss of death, something that he'd stolen from the store. I took him into the store and we found the manager. I found the manager before we went up to the manager's office. And I said, if it's possible, rather than just blow it off and be nice, because I could tell he was a really kind man, is it possible that you could, throw in some element of, this is really not a good thing? And sure enough, the manager told him how bad it was and called up the police, a guy that he knows in the police force, who came in his squad car with the lights running and came upstairs and really seriously mulled over whether he was going to haul this 15-year-old kid off to the juvenile detention center. The kid never shoplifted again. They didn't take him to jail. But kids need to understand that the consequences sometimes of the choices they make can follow them for the rest of their lives. So you're worried about whether the police could be involved. Maybe, but I've helped a lot of parents do this with their kids. So far, I've never once seen a store escalate this. In retailing, shoplifting is considered part of the expense of running a store. There's a certain percentage, I don't know, can't remember the number. It's one of the inherent prices of doing business. And the owner is so amazed that somebody would return something and admit their misdeed that they end up praising the person who returns the stolen item. That's why I went and talked to the store owner ahead of time, because I was pretty sure he was going to do that. And I wanted him to make it a little more serious. I've even had parents call ahead to encourage the manager to take the kid upstairs to the office and do the firm talking to, like I did with the Boy Scout kid. Talk about the possibility of calling the police and press on the kid the seriousness of the whole thing. You conclude by saying the ex has suggested that he have the money deducted from his allowance and the money be given to charity. Well, that's lovely. That is kind of a consequence, but it doesn't fit the crime. No, he has to go face the people that he stole from and return the object. Or if the object is scratched in any way, then he returns the object and he pays for it. Because this is how life goes. I rent a car, and I didn't mean to, but as I rounded a corner, I put a 12-foot scratch on the rental car. They don't just go, "Oh, you didn't mean to." No, they really charged me a lot for repairing this thing, and they charged me for every day, the rental fee for every day that the car's in the shop. No kidding. Welcome to life. And if kids don't learn this early, boy, they're going to learn it really expensively later on. Notice throughout the time that we've been talking, the questions have varied from shoplifting to bullying to people-pleasing to, it doesn't matter what the subject is. The answers are really the answers to these questions. What would it be like if you were to be more loving in this situation? Sometimes as a parent, more loving in teaching. How would it change the world around you if you were more loving? Like this man who said, I think I'm going to give up drinking and porn and, whatever, and see how I am in the world. And holy smokes, he discovered there were all kinds of cool things that he could do to make the world better. Do you want to add love to this situation, or do you want to add fear? You could apply that to pretty much every situation that we've talked about in the last hour. Anger is the fuel of every conflict, while love is the seed of joy. So will you add fuel to the fire, or will you plant the seeds of life? Last, it's more a statement. I choose, because I can always make a choice. I choose to be loving because, and then you learn to fill in the blank. I choose to be loving because I will teach my child something. I choose to be loving because I'll be happier. I choose to be loving because the conflict will instantly resolve. I choose to be loving because that is the pattern and power of the universe. No kidding. Love is the way. We'll see you in a week.